Hi, in today's video I'm going to show you how to open up, disconnect, and remove a NuTone NM100 intercom master station. So the very first thing we should do before we start uninstalling things is we need to talk about the NM100 a little bit so you have a better understanding of what you're going to find when you open it up. The NM100 was designed as somewhat of an universal replacement for older NuTone 3-wire systems and older music and sound or M&S system 4-wire systems. It would work as either a 3-wire master station or a 4-wire master station. The only real requirement was that the actual wire cables had to be a flat parallel conductor cable. So in a NuTone system, a 3-conductor cable is a flat parallel 3-conductor, and since it's a parallel cable, the wires are bonded together, so this one is always next to this one, is always next to this one. In a music and sound installation, you would have a 4-wire flat parallel cable with 4 individual wires. So since the NM100 is sort of a semi-universal replacement model, what you're going to find behind the unit will vary somewhat from installation to installation, because a lot of what you're going to find behind it is what was left over from the original system that was in your house. It was installed to replace an older NuTone 3-wire system. What you're going to find is a flat gray parallel 3-conductor cable. Really old NuTone 3-conductor cables, the outside insulation on all 3 wires is simply gray. The actual color of the wire inside the insulation will be silver, center, and copper. Center always being center because it's in the middle of the other two. If it's an older music and sound system and you have 4-conductor wire, older music and sound 4-conductor wire is always black, red, green, and white. What you find behind your system may be somewhat different. As I've said in many videos, it doesn't really matter what color the wire actually is. The electrons don't care what color the outside of the wire is, as long as the wires are hooked up in their proper locations, and that's part of what we're going to be going over. So you will need to pay attention because this will be on the final. The very first thing you have to do before you do anything else with an NM100 series is you need to turn the power off to the master station. It's important that you do that. We'll get into the details as of why you have to do that as the video goes along, but know right now that the very first step you have to do is go to your circuit breaker panel, figure out which circuit breaker this is connected to, and turn it off. Now, you're going to need a few things to uninstall an NM100. You're going to need some blue masking tape. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. You're going to need a very small flat screwdriver. This is a 2.5mm flat screwdriver. A 2mm is fine. Anything bigger than this is going to be too big and it won't work. You're going to need a Sharpie. You're going to need a pencil. And you're going to need your phone. And we'll talk about the phone first, and then we'll talk about what else and why you need it. The phone is a valuable and easy tool because everybody's got one nowadays. If you think about it, if you're uninstalling your NM100 because you're going to send it off to be repaired, best case scenario is it's going to be gone for 2 weeks. And since you're not an intercom expert, and you probably never have installed an intercom system before, 2 weeks is a long time to remember all of the small details of uninstalling a system and where things hook up. That's where your phone comes into play. You can easily take pictures as you go, and that'll help remind you of how things looked and how things were connected when it comes time to put it back in. So keep this handy and close by. The first thing we're going to do, since we have to go turn our circuit breaker off, is we're going to utilize the old school method, and we're going to use a little piece of masking tape. Most circuit breaker panels in most houses, the breakers aren't labeled, or if they are labeled, they're all wrong. So once you figure out which one this is connected to, take a little piece of tape and put it on the flippy part of the breaker, and that way you'll know 2 weeks later when you have to turn it off again because you're going to reinstall this, you'll know which one it is and you just flip it off and you'll look like a genius. So to get the NM100 off the wall, on the left hand side there's a door that opens up, and behind the door are the room control switches. And on the right hand side is this removable speaker panel. You just sort of grab this on the top and bottom and you kind of wiggle and pull and it pops off. If you have a hard time getting it to wiggle loose, you can use your little flat screwdriver. You can put it in the little groove up here in the top, and you can sort of carefully pry it a little bit, and it'll pop loose and come off, and you can just put it off to the side. Once you have the door open and the speaker panel removed, you can easily see the faceplate screws. There's one here on the left and one here on the right. And we're going to go ahead and take these off. These are fairly long screws. They're about 2 or 2.5 inches long. You know, it's kind of funny because we all complain that manufacturers make screws too short. And then when they make them long, then we complain that they're too long. So I guess you just can't win. So with that one out, we'll do the right hand screw. Now one of the things you need to know is once you take the screws out, there isn't anything holding the NM100 to the wall except a little bit of gravity. There are no hinges, there are no brackets, and there are no clips. So when it comes time to remove the last screw, you need to do it carefully, because what you don't want to have happen is have this flop out of the wall and jerk on all the wires, and that could create problems for you. So once you've got the screws out, you can close the door, and all you have to do is carefully pull this out of the wall and flip it down like this and hold it next to the opening. And the first thing you want to do is find this green wire support strap. This is added to the system to give it some support when you're working on it. And right here up in the center of the wall housing, there's a metal hook, and you hook the green wire inside the hook, and that will let the master station hang on the wall like this. Now, there's something else that you may need, and it might be this. This is a rag. If you have a nicely finished house and your wall is nicely painted, or maybe it's faux finished, or maybe it has wallpaper on it, you don't want to scratch it up by having the master station lean up against it, and as you work on this and it kind of scoots back and forth, it's going to make marks on your paint, and then you're going to get in trouble. So you can take your rag and you can simply put it between the edge of the master station and the wall, and that'll prevent it from making marks on your wall. Since in this particular installation the customer has the highest quality plywood walls, we're not going to worry about that all so much. So since we have it opened up, let's do a brief overview of what we're looking at, and then we'll get to uninstalling it. Looking down at the back of the master station, on the right hand end we have this rectangular magnet, and this is the back of the built-in speaker in the master station. Here on the back of the unit, this is the AM/FM tuner module, and on the edge of the tuner module is this little rectangular circuit board, and this is the antenna adapter board. Back here in the back of the wall housing, in the upper right hand corner, this is the chime module. This is the part that makes the chime tones or doorbell tones in your system. Down here in the bottom of the wall housing is the low voltage transformer that powers the system. Over here we have the connection for the chime, where the chime module ties into the master station itself. It has this multicolored cable assembly here. The colors are orange, black, white, and red, and they're plugged into a plug right here. And then over at the left-hand edge of the master station is the terminal board area, where all of the wires and all of the cables from the remote speakers are connected. So since we're talking about transformers for a second, this is where the transformer lives. Let's talk about why I made you turn the circuit breaker off before you opened up the master station. So the transformer that's used to power your NM100 is a special type of transformer, because built into it are 2 internal fuses. And those fuses are in the transformer to help protect it in case it's overloaded. The transformer is mounted below this metal plate in a can that's down inside the wall. The fuses that are in the transformer are small, and they're fussy, and they're finicky. And when it comes time to disconnect the master station from the transformer, the shock of disconnecting it can blow the fuse and the transformers will go dead. Likewise, when it's time to reinstall the master station and reconnect the master to the transformer, the shock of plugging the plug back together, if the transformer is powered up, can overload the fuses and blow them. If the fuses are blown, the transformer is dead, there's no power to the master, nothing works. If you do that, what that means is you have to remove the transformer from the housing, and you're going to have to pack it up and send it off to us and have us install new fuses in it so it works again. And that's a real hassle. So it's much easier to simply turn the circuit breaker off, and that way you won't blow the fuses. Since this NM100 has been powered down, we can safely unplug the master from the transformer. This multi-wired cable here, which has 2 red wires, 2 black wires, and a green wire, comes from the master station and is connected to this half of the plug. And then these 5 multicolored wires here, we have green, brown, yellow, red, and blue. They come from the transformer, and they're in this half of the plug. And to disconnect this, all you have to do is grab the 2 ends and pull it apart. The transformer end stays in the wall, and this end stays with the master station. I'm going to tuck this out of the way so it doesn't block the view, and then we'll get on to the next step. Here we're looking at a close-up view of the antenna adapter board. So the antenna adapter board is connected to the AM/FM tuner module, which is right here. And the purpose of this board is it adapts the connections to older styles of antennas that were used on older intercom systems. In this particular installation, the antenna is a fairly standard flat twin lead AM/FM cable from a standard AM/FM dipole antenna. This is the type of antenna that NuTone used on almost all of their systems starting in the 1960s. The wires from the flat twin lead are connected to these 2 screws here, and then these 2 screws here have this orange jumper wire. So why is this done this way? Well, a flat twin lead dipole antenna is going to receive both AM and FM signals, and those signals are fed into this part of the adapter board. And then with the components on the adapter board, it routes the AM signals into the other part of the board. The jumper is necessary to get the signals from one end of the board into the other end of the board, and then it goes into the tuner assembly, so you can have both AM and FM on a single antenna. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to disconnect the AM/FM flat twin lead antenna wire. But before we do that, this is a good opportunity to talk about ways to do things so it'll be easy to reinstall later on. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to use some of our blue masking tape, and we're going to label what this cable is. Because 2 weeks later, you may not remember which the antenna wire is. So we're going to take a little piece of blue tape and we're going to wrap it around the antenna cable. And we're going to use our Sharpie and we're going to write antenna on it. We don't really need to write AM/FM antenna because it's the only antenna in there. So you don't really have to worry about it. Now, before we disconnect it from the 2 screws, this is another good opportunity to point out how using your phone comes in handy. So sure, you've labeled the wire as the antenna, and 2 weeks go by and you get your set back and you look in there and you go, oh yeah, that's the antenna. And then you think, I don't remember where it goes. Where does it connect up? I can't remember. Well, it connects up right here to these 2 screws. So you can use your phone and you can take a picture of the connection before you take it apart. The other thing that you can do, because if you take a bunch of pictures, what you're going to end up with 2 weeks later is, when it's time to reinstall this, you're going to think, oh, well, I've got pictures. I'm all set. I can scroll, and you scroll through your pictures, and you got a lot of pictures, and you can't really remember what you were taking the picture of. Here's what I like to do, if you're not sure. This is where your pencil comes in handy. Take your yellow pencil and point to what it is that you're taking the picture of, and then take your picture. And when you scroll back 2 weeks later to look at it, you'll remember, oh yeah, that's where the antenna connects up because I was pointing to it with the yellow pencil and I remember doing that, and then it will be easy. This is just a little tip. It comes in pretty handy and it actually works out pretty well. So now that we've taken our picture and we've labeled our antenna, let's go ahead and loosen the 2 screws, remove the wire from the adapter board, and we'll just tuck it back inside the wall. I've already showed you back here in the wall housing, this is your Chime module, and the cable assembly that comes from the Chime module are these black, white, orange, and red wires, and if you follow them down to the back of the master station, you'll see that they're plugged in right here into a socket on the board. And actually next to that socket, printed on the board, it says Chime. So that makes it pretty easy. But you still want to sort of double up and hedge your bets on this. So we're going to take a piece of blue tape. We're going to put it around the wires that come from the Chime module. And we're going to take our Sharpie and we're going to write Chime on it. Alright, so that's good. But when 2 weeks go by and you get your set back, you'll look at this and you go, oh yeah, those are the Chime module wires, that's great. And then you'll look at the back of the intercom and you go, I don't remember where's that plug in? I don't remember, I don't know. And you may not see that it says Chime. So this is another really good opportunity to take your pencil and point to this and take a picture of it so you remember where it goes. And that just makes it easy. After you've taken the picture, all you have to do is take the wires and pull it straight up and it unplugs. This again goes back in the wall. We're about halfway through right now, and now is the part where you really are going to have to pay attention because it can get a little bit tricky. And as I said, this will be on the final. Okay, so what you're looking at is the terminal board area of the NM100. And the terminal board area is where all of the wires from all of the remote speakers are connected to the master station. And this is the part that can be a little tricky. And the reason it can be a little tricky is because since the NM100 was designed to be somewhat of a universal replacement for older systems, the colors of the wires that you have may not match the colors of the wires in this particular installation. If you have a NuTone system, the wires could be all gray, or they could be blue and gray, or they could be red, blue, and gray. If you have a music and sound system, an older one, you could have black, red, green, and white. If you have an old Rittenhouse system, you could have red, black, violet, and brown. A lot of different possibilities when you're talking about a system that could be installed on many different types of fundamentally flat parallel cable. What it really comes down to is the color of the wires, again, doesn't make any difference. If you have a brown and violet wire, the electrons in the wire don't know it's brown and violet. The electrons don't care if it's brown and violet. They don't care if it's yellow and green, and they don't care if it's red and black. They might care a little bit if it's teal and burnt orange, because nobody really likes teal and burnt orange. But for the most part, electrons don't discriminate. They don't care. What they do care about is that their wires that they're in are connected to the proper terminals. And that's really what counts in what we're going to do next. So let's take a look at how things are connected up and then how to deal with what could be something that looks substantially different than what this is to start with. So in the terminal board area, there are 4 large standoffs that we're going to look at first. So there's one large standoff down here on this board, and next to the standoff printed on the board it says white. And there's a group of wires that are all connected under this screw. There's another large standoff right here, and on the board next to it it says red. And there's another large standoff right here, and next to it on the board it says black. And then over here we have this long black rectangular connector, and there's a bunch of individual wires connected to that. A system like the NM100, the way the wires are connected is all similar colors are bundled together and then connected underneath one individual screw. So as an example, these wires, if these wires are all white colored wires, they're all bundled together and they're connected to the screw that says white. These wires would be all the red wires and they're all connected under the screw that says red. And these wires would be all the black wires and they're all under the screw that says black. The exception to this is the wires, the individual wires in the long black connector, these are the green wires, and each green wire has its own individual connection, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. So again, it doesn't matter what color wires you have. It could be white, red, and black. It could be brown, yellow, and green, or brown, yellow, and purple. It doesn't really make any difference because you know that whatever color wires are under this screw, that's where they belong. And whatever color wires are under this screw, that's where they belong. And whatever color wires are under this screw, that's where they go. And all you have to do is duplicate that and you'll be okay. So here's how you do this. We're going to start with this one down here, and we're going to loosen the screw. And we're going to pull the bundle of wires out from under the screw, like this. And then we're going to take a piece of masking tape, and we're going to wrap it around the bundle, like this. And then we're going to take our Sharpie, and we're going to write white. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if the actual color of the wires are actually purple? It doesn't matter. The electrons don't know it's purple, but the electrons do know that where they want to be connected is down here to the giant standoff with the screw that says white on the board. So that's why this is white. White here, they go together. So that makes it pretty easy. So we'll put that up out of the way. And then we'll do the next one, which is right here. And if you were paying attention, you'll know that this standoff is marked as red. And what we're going to do is put a piece of tape on this. And we're going to write on the tape red. And then we're going to do the last one right here. And again, if you're paying attention, you know this is the screw that says black. And we're going to take a piece of tape on here, put it around the bundle of wires, and we're going to mark them as black. See, that wasn't really that hard. It's just a matter of being somewhat organized. Now we've gotten those three groups of wires out of the way, we find these other two screws down here that were kind of hidden under the tangle of wires. And on the board next to these two screws, it says door, and it says red and black. And these are the wires that come from your entry door speaker station. And they're not the doorbell wires, they're the communication wires that connect the speaker cone in your entry door station back to the master station. In this particular installation, the installer happened to have red and black wires, which happens to match the colors that are on the boards. You may not have red and black wires. You may have red and white, or red and green, or black and white. Again, it doesn't make any difference what color the wires are as long as you know that the wires go on these two screws. So you do the same thing that you've done on everything else so far. It would be a good opportunity to take a picture of it, and you want to point at it with your pencil like this so you know why you're taking the picture. Because let's say, for instance, you've got black and green, and maybe the installer wasn't paying attention and he put the green wire on the black screw and the black wire on the red screw. It doesn't make any difference which way they go, but most people are more comfortable if they hook it up exactly like it was before they took it apart. So if you take a picture of it, you'll know that green goes over here and black goes over there, and the world's happy. So we're going to loosen the screws. We're going to take the wires off from under the screws, and once again we're going to take our tape and we're going to put it on the wires, and we're going to write on the tape door speaker, and that way you know where it is, and that goes out of the way. So we're almost done. We only have these wires left over here to deal with, and that's what we're going to do next. In the long rectangular black connector, there are 10 slots for 10 individual speaker stations, and there's one wire in each slot, and each wire comes from one individual remote station. The locations are marked on the board as room 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth, all the way up through 10. And they correspond, the numbering on the board corresponds with the numbering on the room control switches behind the door on the front of the master station. So when you disconnect these, you need to be organized, because when it comes time to reconnect them, you really want to reconnect them in the same order that they came off of. Otherwise, the order of speaker stations will be a jumble. It won't be what you're used to, and then when you try to make an adjustment with the speaker control switches, you'll be adjusting the wrong room. So this isn't really very complicated. Now, in this particular installation, there are only 4 remote stations. But if you have a large system, you may have 10, or if you have a maxed out system, you may have 13 individual wires here. And 13 individual wires is quite a bit, and it's kind of hard to put 13 pieces of blue masking tape on the wires, one on each. It's going to be a big jumble and it's going to be kind of a big mess. So I'm going to show you an easier way to do this. This is the way I do it when I go out in the field and remove one of these from a customer's home, and it's a much easier way to go. So this is where your small flat screwdriver comes into. Inside here on this part of the black connector, there's a small set screw that when you tighten it down, it holds the wire in the slot down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to back the screw off a couple turns, and that will loosen the clamp so the wire comes out of the connector. Now we need to mark this in a way that makes it easy to remember where it goes. And this is the way I like to do it, and I think it works pretty well. We know this came from room number 1 because that's what it says on the board. So we're going to take our black Sharpie and we're going to put 1 hash mark on the wire for number 1. Now we're going to disconnect the next one, which surprisingly enough will be number 2, and we're going to put 2 hash marks on the wire. And the reason you use a Sharpie is once the Sharpie dries, it sort of gets into the vinyl insulation of the wire and it's not going to rub off, so it's going to be okay. Now we'll loosen the next one, and again, surprisingly enough, that's going to be number 3, so we're going to make 3 hash marks. Pretty easy, huh? It saves a lot of time when it comes time to reinstall, instead of trying to guess which one is which, and then 3/4 of them are wrong, then you got to shuffle them all around. It's all a giant pain in the neck. It's just easier to mark them. Now we're going to do the last one, which is technically number 4 in the row, but we're going to pretend for a second. We're going to pretend that this is a really big system, and this one is actually going to be number 9. Okay, so put on your pretend hat for a second. We're going to loosen the screw, and we're going to pretend that this last one is number 9. So how do you mark number 9 so it's easy to deal with? Well, because 9 little hash marks, kind of a pain in the neck. So this is the way I do it. We're going to pretend this is number 9. We're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hash marks, and then we're going to leave a space, and then we're going to make 4. Because it's easy to know, we always group things in 5s and 10s. That makes it easy. It's like when you're counting something, you're writing it down on a piece of paper, you make marks 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5's a diagonal across them. And when you look at that, automatically, well, that's 5. Well, this is kind of the same thing. The way I mark it, when I see this, I already know that's 5. I don't have to really think about it. And then you can easily see that's 4. If it were 10, or let's say it were 11, then you would have 5, 5, a space, and 1. And then immediately when you look at it, you go, well, it's 10 and 1, so it's 11. It's a good thing I paid attention in elementary school when I learned how to count. That's all you really have to do. Once you get those all disconnected and they're marked, you tuck them back in the wall, and guess what? We're almost done. We have everything disconnected. All we have to do is lift the master station off the wall housing. So all you have to do is lift it up to support it a little bit, unhook the green support cable from the hook, and lift it away from the wall, and set it down. And your NM100 master station is now disconnected. When you get this back after it's been repaired and it's time to reinstall it, pretty much reinstalling it is the direct opposite of uninstalling it. You're going to hang it back on the hook, and you're going to work, I think the best way to do it is to work from left to right and reconnect things in the opposite order that you disconnected it. And since you have taken pictures and you've labeled things, it should be easy. And the other thing you can do is you can watch this video and pretty much do it in the opposite order of what I told you. When I tell you to, as an example, if I tell you to disconnect the AM/FM antenna wire from the 2 wires on the antenna adapter board, instead of disconnecting it, which you've already done, you're going to reconnect it, and so on and so on and so on. Now remember, before it comes time to plug it back into the transformer, we're going to take our power cable from the master station and our power cable from the transformer. Before you plug these back together, you have to go turn the circuit breaker off, which is going to be easy because you put a piece of blue tape on the circuit breaker tab so you know exactly which one it is. And when it's turned off, you just plug it back together and you're ready to go. If you don't turn it off and you plug it back together, odds are you'll blow the fuses in the transformer, and then you'll have to take the transformer out, you'll have to send it to me, you'll have to wait 2 weeks, altogether pay more money for something that you could just walk in the laundry room and flip the breaker off. I hope you found this video to be interesting and perhaps helpful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up on YouTube because that helps us. If you like our channel and you like our videos, please subscribe. There'll be a banner right here. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell or on the wheel, put in your email address, and every time we publish a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.